In this video, we are going to talk about will there be floating cities in the future? Climate change and living on the water. So before starting, please like this video and subscribe to this channel for our future updates. Are floating cities a real possibility? The Smithsonian Institution's next Futures exhibition will include a scale model of Oceanix City, a design that has the potential to house more than 10,000 people. Architecture and urban planning are naturally thinking about the future of cities as the world's population approaches 7.9 billion people and is projected to reach 9.7 billion by 2050, according to forecasts. In the 1960s, Yonah Friedman, an architect with a vision, imagined Spatial City, a city built on stilts that could be traversed by existing urban structures. Archigram, a renowned British architectural team, created plug-in Metropolis around the same period, which was planned as a computer-controlled, modular megastructure of a city with removable components. In a presentation earlier this year, Liam Young, a speculative architect and film director, described Earth City as a future in which the whole world's population could live in a single hyperdense city about the size of Tokyo, with the rest of the planet devoted to rewilding. But what if the most promising model for a future city wasn't on land? From Buckminster Fuller's unrealized proposal for a floating city in Tokyo Bay in the 1960s to entrepreneur Lazarus Long's quest for a new island nation on an unclaimed Caribbean shoal in 1999, floating cities with modern amenities and commercially viable real estate have long been a dream of utopias. However, with 40.5 million people expected to be displaced as a result of the climate catastrophe by 2020 and sea level rise threatening the future of coastal towns, offshore living is beginning to sound less like a whimsical concept and more like a viable option. At least, that's what the founders of Oceanix, a business specializing in the design and construction of floating cities, think. In 2019, the UN Habitat Program, which promotes sustainable urban development, organized a roundtable of architects, designers, researchers, and entrepreneurs to evaluate the possibility of floating cities as a climate change and affordable housing solution. The day-long meeting, which was co-hosted by Oceanix, the MIT Center for Ocean Engineering, and the Explorers Club in the United States, unveiled the concept of Oceanix City. This hurricane-resistant, zero-waste city would be made up of 300 people living on 4.5-acre hexagonal floating islands. 6 of these islands would form a ring-shaped community with a sheltered harbor in the center. 6 of these settlements would combine to form a small city with a population of 10,800 people. The numbers might theoretically add up endlessly. The city, which was designed by Danish architect Bjarke Ingels Group in collaboration with Oceanix, may appear to be something out of a science fiction novel, but Oceanix is currently preparing to build a prototype of a 5-acre city for 300 residents in a location that has yet to be determined by the company. According to Oceanix CEO Mark Collins, the communities we're talking to are quite excited about the prospect of leveraging this technology to plan for their own future. Oceanix at the Smithsonian. A scale model of Oceanix City will be on display at the Smithsonian Institution's Arts and Industries Building in Washington, D.C., as part of the upcoming exhibition Futures. Through the lens of art and technology, the show, which will premiere in November, will attempt to investigate what the future holds for humanity. Balanced between futuristic conceptions such as flying automobiles and problem-solving technical solutions such as biodegradable funeral urns, the display will provide visitors with a multidimensional glimpse into what is to come in the future. We wanted to highlight that there is no single path to a specific kind of future, says Ashley Malise, the exhibition's curator, who emphasizes that there is no single pathway to a specific kind of future. As a result of these roads, there are many different paths to take and many different futures to imagine. How it all started. Oceanix was founded by Polynesian entrepreneur Collins Chen, who envisioned floating towns as a solution to climate change while serving as the Minister of Tourism in French Polynesia. Collins Chen was in charge of studying the long-term implications of sea level rise on the islands from 2007 to 2008. 6 years later, a research published in the journal Nature Conservation in 2013 verified what Polynesians already knew: rising oceans were projected to submerge approximately a third of French Polynesia's 118 islands over the next 60 years. If seawalls are too costly, thought Collins Chen, do you start thinking about managed retreat? The idea of relocating people, buildings, and other assets from locations that are considered vulnerable to sea level rise has received conflicting reactions. While some see it as inevitable, others consider it a last resort. Collins Chen and his co-founder Itai Matamam hope to change attitudes with Oceanix. We would progress rather than regress, he says. Instead of fleeing to higher land, people and cities would push themselves beyond the water's brink. Kiribati, a neighboring group of South Pacific islands, bought approximately 8 square miles of land on a Fijian island in 2014, making it the world's first international land purchase for climate refugees. In 2019, Indonesian President Joko Widodo revealed intentions to relocate the country's capital from Jakarta to Borneo, citing rising sea levels and Jakarta's frequent floods as justifications. According to a paper published in Science this June by A.R. Siders, a disaster researcher at the University of Delaware, managed retreat could entail advancing onto floating infrastructure. Siders, who describes himself as a champion for bold climate adaptation, believes that long-term adaptation will need some type of managed retreat, such as creating floating neighborhoods or towns or converting highways into canals in order to live with the water. Retro visions of future cities. For millennia, both fictitious and real-life versions of floating cities have captivated the human imagination. A French string quartet sails on a floating metropolis constructed to navigate the waves of the Pacific Ocean in Jules Verne's science fiction novel Propeller Island, published in 1895. Kevin Costner, who has evolved gills, struggles for survival in a post-apocalyptic world when much of the globe is underwater due to the melting of the polar ice caps, in the much-maligned 1995 action picture Waterworld. A wealthy Japanese developer commissioned Buckminster Fuller, the architect who popularized the geodesic dome, to construct Triton City on the sea in Tokyo Bay in the early 1960s. Apartments, schools, parks, and stores were to be housed in the city, which was designed as a succession of floating city blocks with permanent ties to mainland Tokyo. Although Triton City was never built, numerous other floating cities of varied scales have. In Brunei's Kampong Air, a floating village dating back over 600 years, more than 13,000 people live on stilted dwellings connected by a 23-mile promenade. Makoko, a hamlet in Lagos, Nigeria, lives on precarious stilts over a forwarded lagoon with minimal access to electricity or basic sanitation. The indigenous Orosh people have lived on floating islands on the Peruvian side of Lake Titicaca for almost 4,000 years. Migration to water was a desperate solution for some, such as the Makoko village, due to a lack of suitable infrastructure and inexpensive homes on land. For others, political upheaval was the catalyst. When the Inca Empire grew, the Orosh people were forced to flee to the lake. The challenges to building a floating city. In order to build something that floats, Bergman adds, you have to think about ballast and wave action as well as how the energy that is built into the waves will begin to work with whatever floating structure you're building. As a result, Big began investigating floating pods, including how to maintain them, how to connect them, and how to protect them from the effects of wave forces. The end product is a modular metropolis that is designed to promote the development of a man-made ecosystem that is based on a circular economy. As a result, it incorporates technologies such as biorock, which can be used to construct robust artificial reefs on which corals can thrive. The Sustainable Development Goals are a 17-point blueprint for a better and more sustainable future for all. The city is also taking on the take-make-waste economy through collaborations with organizations such as the Center for Zero Waste Design. What do you think of our video? Let me know in the comments section below. If you enjoy this video and want to hear from me again, be sure to hit that subscribe button before you go. Thanks for watching.